everyone. It's Nycci Nellis, and welcome back to Industry Night, my little love letter to the people who feed us, pour for us, and keep this hospitality industry moving. Now, first of all, Happy New Year. Woohoo! This is our first episode of 2026, and I am very happy to be back behind the mic. I'm really excited about our show today because I'm going to be talking to a chef who has really changed the conversation on dining and specifically Japanese dining in the Midwest. It's David Utterback. And before I get to chef, let's talk a little bit about me. Listen, I've been off the last couple of weeks. So have all of you. So, I keep myself super busy and I eat all the time. So, quick Philly food tour highlights include Little Water, which is phenomenal. And I had to go back to Kalaya because it's the best Thai restaurant in the country. It's so good. If you follow me on Instagram, you know what I'm talking about. I did get out of the country for a couple of days. I was on the French side of St. Martin, where I did not leave Grand Coste the entire time because honestly, you do not have to. And no, I'm not talking about a all-inclusive resort or something like that. We stay at this little tiny space. It is not fancy, but it is on the ocean. And you literally just walk into town every day for croissants and quiche, and then walk back and get your sun in or your reading in, or both if you're me. And then you walk back into town later for some incredible restaurants. Of course, my favorite is always Le Pressoir. They do the caviar topped beef tartare, which is mwah, chef's kiss. And then you have to go to the Lolos. We called them the shacks growing up, but they literally grill the lobsters that they pull out of the water right there on the drums. It's so fun and fabulous. Back in DC, I did pop into Maison Bar event. I love Matt Conroy and Isabel Koss, and they are just doing amazing things there, like their glorious seaweed chow buns. And what's Christmas without going to Chang Chang for Peking duck? I mean, if you know, you know. A quick 24-hour visit to New York City, because that's how I roll. Russ and Daughters for a bagel and a schmear. And then Sugarfish, which I have not been to in forever, but we did their classic Trust Me Omakase. It's an oldie, but a goodie. Actually, both Russ and Daughters and Sugarfish are both oldies and goodies. But I do feel like Sugarfish is the perfect way to bring us into today's guest. Because we're talking sushi and we're talking craft and we're also talking about expectations. So, joining me today is Chef David Utterback. He is a chef who is redefining what world class Japanese cuisine looks like in the American Midwest. He's a multiple time James Beard Award semifinalist, and he actually made history in 2023 as the first Nebraska based chef to be named a finalist for Best Chef Midwest. He's behind Omaha's acclaimed restaurants, Yoshitomo, Oda, and Koji. And the two of them, one is an intimate six-seat omakase counter, which I have lots of questions about, and the other one is a lively izakaya. He's self-taught, born to a Japanese mother and American chef. His path to sushi is not traditional. He was very into the Omaha indie punk scene, which I know nothing about and need to know more because I consider myself from a different punk scene. He took a formative trip to Japan and he has forged his own way. His work has been described as Japanese precision with Midwestern sensibility, and his restaurants are challenging the idea of where exceptional sushi belongs. So I am so thrilled to welcome him to Industry Night. David, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
This is going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about you. Let's talk about when did you get into cooking and what is the indie punk scene? Tell me more.
So a previous life, when you're young, and you just want to pick up girls, you join a band.
Mm,
So yeah, in high school, growing up in Omaha, you don't know how to play instruments. Punk music is like the perfect vehicle to get into bands and music, and
uh-huh.
and so that was that, and I Omaha coming up in the early 2000s. Omaha was sort of the one of the capitals of independent music in the U.S. We had
Wow.
a yeah, just like an insane music scene here. Saddle Creek Records, Bright Eyes, The Faint. We were kind of all over, the music scene. All of our guys were in Rolling Stone and things like that. And so it was like a really exciting time to be in music. Uh, and so, nobody really makes it. Most bands just kind of fizzle out as you realize you're either not good at music or, you can't really make any money. And that's just sort of what happened there.
So
Right.
how did that fizzle turn into a sizzle?
Well, being in the band, and also transitioning into food, it's just a gray area. I was just
Hmm.
living in a house with my bandmates and all of their girlfriends, and so there was 11 of us living in this house. I still couldn't afford rent, and
Hmm.
so one of the roommates was a bartender at a sushi restaurant. He said that they were hiring. I figured I needed a third job.
Hmm.
This was some free food, and I really loved sushi. I wasn't into food. I just
And so, can I ask what year is this?
this must have been 2005, 2006, maybe
Okay.
2006.
And
Yeah.
I'm just sort of curious. I mean, at that time in Omaha, what is the dining scene like? I mean, what is sort of where are you learning about food or you're not? Like going into that restaurant sort of changed everything.
Yeah. So I did not come from a place where we ate at restaurants,
Okay.
and the few times that we did, they were really bad. Like not
Oh,
good, they were exceptionally bad. Um,
okay.
and so I didn't come from a place where we really went to nice restaurants or restaurants very very often at all,
Hmm.
and so I didn't really have any sort of sensibility about any of those things, and so getting a job at the restaurant wasn't about a career, it was just about paying the bills, and the plan
Hmm.
was what everyone's plan is in a restaurant is I'm just going to find something else better here soon. I'm going to go back to school or I'm going to win the lottery. And that's going
Hmm.
to, I'm going to do better, not in a restaurant. I just need this for today. And so
When,
Omaha,
but when did that epiphany happen for you? Like as you've got this job, you're at a sushi restaurant.
yeah,
Where were you like, oh my God, I love this. Was it the flavor? Was it the texture? Was it the taste? Was it the person who was teaching you? Like, what was that moment?
it was, I was just a line dog. I was just cranking out California rolls, a couple
Mhm.
100,000 a year. It was like, you know, the restaurant I was working at was the first kind of new hip West Coast style restaurant, in Nebraska, and it somewhat helped change the restaurant conversation here. But it
Hmm.
wasn't, I didn't want to be a sushi chef for my life. It
Right.
wasn't until I took my very first trip to Japan, and just unknowingly finding my way into the Sukiyabashi Jiro counter.
Okay,
Uh,
but what brought you to that trip? Did you go with your mom
yeah,
or
yeah.
okay, so you went
It,
with
it was a
family.
it was a trip where you know I had gone to Japan with my family when I was like 6 or 7. It was
Okay.
1986, 1987, and um, when my parents got a divorce. Me and my mom would always talk, oh, we got to go back to Japan. And it's just one of those things that everybody does where you talk about
Hmm.
this trip you're going to take and
Yeah.
how you're going to save the money and next year you're going to go. And you never do it because that's
Mm.
just not how those things work. When you're poor, you
Right.
don't have money to save up for that big trip because once a year a big thing comes and it takes out any sort of savings that you have. And so
Mm.
we'd been talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. And one night at the restaurant, I was talking to one of the bartenders, and she was a world traveler. She spent most of the year all over the world. She would just come back, make some money, and then go back, to South Africa, Vietnam,
I'm so
Spain.
envious. I'm so
Yeah, and I
envious of
was I
people
was
like
like,
that.
I've been trying to go to Japan for years. What's the secret? And she's like, do you want to know the secret to world travel? I was like, yeah. She goes, you just buy the ticket and then you're effed. like you're just
I like
screwed.
this.
You just have
Right.
to, you're in the hole. You've got to work, you got to make the money. And so that night I booked a ticket to Japan and was screwed. Then I had to go. I had to save money. I didn't have the money. I was in debt to do it, and so then I had to make the most of it. And
Hmm.
that trip changed my life. It got me to where I am now. And so me getting into that gyro counter was, this is 2008, I think.
Hmm.
Um, I I Googled best sushi restaurant in Tokyo. That came up. I didn't really know much about the culture. I just wanted to eat the best sushi in Tokyo.
Right.
I thought that I was the best sushi chef ever.
Hmm.
So I wanted to see what it was like in Japan. And I showed I took a picture of the computer screen of the restaurant that Google showed me, because this is 2008. This is like,
Right.
right.
Totally different.
And
Yeah.
I showed it to the concierge at my hotel. He booked me for the next day,
Hmm.
and the next day I was sitting by myself at what would become, one of the hardest restaurants to get into, and what would essentially kind of spark this whole thing, this whole like sushi craze, the sushi counter craze. And so, back then I was the only guest at that counter.
Wow.
My meal was 15 minutes long. The guys that I'd never encountered like a professional. I came from restaurants where everybody was a pirate, man. You played pranks, you watched the clock, you drank, you scammed beers in the walk-in cooler.
Right.
You stuffed, you pillaged the restaurant however you could. And so
Hmm.
this was the first time that I had experienced a professional, and I had never before eaten fine food. The nicest
Hmm.
restaurant I had eaten at was the restaurant I worked at, or the Chili's, Applebee's that I took my mom to. And
Hmm.
so I didn't even know food like this existed. I
So did
thought,
you start? So did you do a stage with him? Like now that you saw this, you just had this experience.
yeah, I
How
was
did
like,
you like? What did you take from it, and how did you like? How did we go from working, like as a guy just doing
yeah,
California rolls, right?
hmm,
Which, are delicious, don't get me wrong, but like
yeah,
that's not speaking to the
absolutely.
kind of food you're doing today. So how did that guy open up three restaurants in Omaha, Nebraska?
So I was sitting at that counter, and somewhere in the middle of it, I was like, "This is, you know, as a young man, every young person is kind of looking for like that thing. What are you going to
Hmm.
do? What are you going to commit to?" And I was going to school, playing in music, working these jobs, doing, I was all over the place.
Right.
And somewhere in the middle of that meal, I was like, "This is what I want to do." And I
Mm.
knew something important had happened to me. I had a little book, a little journal in my pocket, and I was like frantically trying to like remember everything, back before, I had a notes app on a phone. This is
Right. You could just
2008.
talk to it.
I have pictures of that meal. I took them with my razor phone or my katana phone,
Okay.
right? In fact, I spent so long on one of the bites that the chef Ono, he like stole the piece off my plate and he threw it in the garbage.
Oh,
And I
because he
was
was like,
like,
eat it. He's like,
yeah,
eat it.
yeah. And so I was like, oh my God, I like died of embarrassment, right then and there. But I learned. And so I knew that meal was important. Immediately getting out of that meal, I sat in front of the building. There's a little, it's attached to sort of a subway exit. And I sat
Hmm.
against that building, and people just walked over me for the next hour as I just like frantically wrote in this book all the things that I could remember about that meal. And
Hmm.
from there, everything kind of became clear, and I quit doing all the other stuff that I was doing, and just sort of like committed to whatever path that I was like, I'm going to do whatever it's going to take for me to do that.
Okay. So when you get back, like I want to move ahead a little bit, right?
Mhm.
So we're back in Omaha. You're still working at the restaurant. What do? Like you now have three restaurants, but how do you get in front of people to sort of hustle your way to get the money to open these restaurants? Like, what was the path?
So, there's no one to teach me. I'm reaching out to there's less than, I think, 10 counters in the US at the time. I'm reaching
Mm,
out to chefs in New York and LA. No one's taking me seriously.
mm.
There folks in Japan. They're not taking sponsoring, visas. Nobody wants to take you. And so I have to start teaching myself. And so I start bringing back books.
Hmm.
I buy every cookbook I can find in Japan, in Japanese and in English, everything, garbage, sushi at home books, whatever I can find. I'm buying them and I'm bringing them
Sushi
back.
for dummies, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I have it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's knowledge to be gained everywhere. You can't write
Hmm.
it. You can't write anything off. And so I start trying to replicate the meal that I had had, and I start hosting these omakase counters at the
Okay.
restaurant. And it starts out as once a quarter. I invite some people that I think would enjoy it. It's four seats at the time. I don't even know if the restaurant that I was working at really knew that I was doing them for the first year and a half. It was just
Okay.
sort of happening. And then it starts to pick up steam. I decide that I want to do more, but I can't do them at the restaurant. And so I start asking my friends here in town in Omaha if I can take over their bar on Monday
Mm.
nights when they're closed. And I'm reaching out to guests in town who are, into the food scene and good guests and diners. And then I start doing that local or regionally. I start reaching out
So you're
to
like the original pop-up, really? I
when
mean,
I
seriously?
when I started, you know, messaging people, I said I have this thing. They're doing it in New York. It's called a pop up, and
Okay.
people are like, I don't know what that is, right? And so I have to explain what a pop up is. And
Hmm.
so I'm reaching out to restaurants in Chicago, Denver, New York, Dallas, everywhere, Davenport, Iowa, Des Moines, Kansas City, and reaching out to restaurants that are closed on Mondays. Looks like they have a bar. Cold call them, cold email them, ask if I can come and take over. And then from there, I go and look at local food blogs because it's
Okay,
2009, 2010.
sure. So that's blowing up.
It's not blowing up. I have to personally message and ask every guest for a couple of years to come to my dinner. Nobody knows
Right. No,
about
no, no. I mean, like the food blogs. Like in
it.
2009, like instead of influencers, we had the blogs, right? Like there were
Yep.
so many.
Yep.
So let me ask you, I'm sort of curious because you have this amazing experience in Japan. You're trying to recreate it, um, both physically and through taste. How were you able to get access to the pristine product? Because I assume so much of that experience had to do with the product you had.
Yeah, so I didn't have
Okay.
access to the product. I was using the sort of just general mediocre supply chain that
Mm,
that I could get access to, and I could get a little bit of Japanese fish, but I had no access to anything that was something that I would really just brag about.
hmm.
And so really I'm trying to teach myself technique. I'm going back and forth to Japan twice a year.
Oh, wow.
I'm eating at these like top counters. I'm eating with Takashi Saito at Sushi Saito when he's a one star in the garage of the embassy, the US embassy. I'm eating
Hmm.
with Sushi Yoshitake when he's a one star. I'm eating with all the greats before they became three stars and like impossible to get into. And so
Right.
I'm building flavor memory and trying to remember these things, and I'm stealing
Mm.
tricks and techniques, and I'm bringing back books. And so I'm embarrassed of the sushi I'm making for a long time, from
Hmm.
2009 10 through, I don't know, last week. It's never been on the level that I want it to be. But that's how I'm like building up my technique. I'm just training myself. And so at a certain point, I was a corporate chef for this restaurant. It grew from one restaurant
Hmm.
when it started to when I left 15, and I was sort of the corporate chef in charge of the all the sushi side. And
Okay.
you get to a point in your career as a cook where you just need to commit. You need to make a decision whether you're going to like grow your dream or grow someone else's,
Hmm.
right? And either choice is fine. They're both noble paths. You just can't live in the middle of those two things. And I was for a long time. And so I parted ways
Can
with
I
the
ask
company.
you a question? I
Yeah.
wonder, do you feel, and this may be too personal, but I get personal on this show. Do you, given your upbringing and your fear of not having enough money, do
Hmm.
you think that part of that issue of letting go to live your dream was the fear of money?
Absolutely.
Because, like I think about like your friend who was like, buy the ticket, and then you got to figure it
Mhm.
out. Did you use that to sort of fuel your vision to be like, I got to buy the ticket. I got to open up my own
A bit.
restaurant. Like it's the only way to do it.
So, I was making too much money as a corporate chef. And I was talking with another friend who's a corporate chef who just kind of made the same decision that I did the other day here in
Hmm.
town. And he was like, if I stayed, I would get too used to the money and I would never
Hmm.
be able to go do these other things that I want to do because I would have to separate myself from that money. And so when I say too much, it's not like I was rich, but
Sound like you're making millions. I know.
yeah, I was like making 65,000 a year. Like it's
Right.
more money than a line cook's ever seen, right?
Hmm.
And I gave it all to the bar, right? So I'm poor. So at the time, it's not easy for me to make the decision to leave. But I never would have left. Like the money was it had a hold on me, and
Hmm.
so just one day deciding I'm just gonna leave here and I'm gonna go open up a restaurant. It's too hard of a decision. You can't
Yeah.
just go from I'm doing well financially to I'm just going to live like super poor again.
Right.
Uh, but that's kind of how it needed to be, right? So when we
Hmm.
opened up the restaurant, I didn't have any money or backing. I opened
Mm.
this thing on
Which one? You opened up Yoshitomo
Yoshitomo.
first?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
so let's talk a little bit about Yoshitomo
Yep.
and its concept.
So really, when we opened up, I just needed a job.
Hmm.
This was my dream to own a restaurant. I had all these ideas how I would do it better, when I was
Mm.
working for someone else. And
So
then
easy.
you learn that reality sets in, and it's not anything like you thought.
Hmm.
And so there was a 6 month period from when I left the restaurant that I was working at, the corporate
Hmm.
restaurant that I was working at, to opening the doors on the new one.
Wow.
I had no money, no nothing. I found an old Subway sandwich shop. I I got them to let it was no one was it was empty for a couple of years. Nobody
So
was
wait, did
renting
they
it from
still
me.
have the counter in it?
I got the
Oh, wow.
pictures like where the Yoshitomo
Cool.
sushi bar is
Uh-huh.
exactly where the sandwich bar was.
That's what I'm envisioning.
Yeah. So sandwich artist to sushi artist is like not too far of a stretch, right? Um,
Huh. A little
but
bit.
it was 6 months. I needed money to buy equipment. I drank a
Mm.
couple bottles of wine one night. Applied for every 0% interest credit card I could get my hands on. Got all
Jeez.
of them.
Hmm.
Immediately got access to like 40, $50,000 in credit
Wow.
overnight. Tanked my credit score.
Of course.
Right? And that's how we opened up the restaurant. And that restaurant, it wasn't intended to be anything special. It was just going to do things slightly better than I had come from. Like I knew the
Hmm.
tricks, I knew the industry, I knew how to open a corporate restaurant and make money, but I also knew the places where maybe quality wise I could do better. And
Right.
so we weren't that different. It was mostly big sushi rolls with mayonnaise. We served sake bombs, all of that stuff.
Well, did you feel at that time you had to give the people what they knew so that they would trust you to do your next step? You know what I mean? Because
Yeah, and
I think sometimes I walk into a restaurant and I think I know what the chef wants.
hmm
And I'm a different kind of diner, right? So like
hmm
I well, I talk to the chef and I understand the concept, and but sometimes I see what's happening around me and I'm like, you're not you're not leading the people to you. You're just giving them what you want. So sometimes you have to help. You know what I mean?
and I think I did understand that because I wanted to open this omakase counter and I didn't
Hmm.
want a regular restaurant, but and we explored it and I realized that we didn't have the population, nobody knew what it was. I had to educate more people, so I needed
And they
something.
had to trust you. They had to
Hmm.
trust you as their guide. You know,
Yeah,
like when you trust somebody in any industry, like you're like, yeah, I know the food's going to be good because I
yeah.
had that sake bomb and it was delicious.
So the plan pivoted from originally trying to open up a counter. It was, I just need a restaurant. We can use the restaurant. Maybe I can continue doing my dinners when the restaurant's
Hmm.
closed or after or whatever. We ended up building a small side counter, a tiny
Mm,
tiny counter, right where the soda machine was in the subway. Uh, and so I had this little side 6-seater counter. It was super cramped, really hard, but it was a place where I could start workshopping what would become what we have now. And
mm,
so quickly over within the first year, we started I noticed that guests were gravitating towards the more interesting things we were trying to do on the menu, more of the
mm.
tasting menu style plates that I wanted to do. The restaurant that I kind of dreamed of having, like a fancy, nice, you know, fast, fine, casual, fine dining restaurant. I didn't want the maki roll restaurant that I came from. I dreamed of something else, and guests were
Hmm.
gravitating towards that. And so we quickly started making real big decisions that I thought would break the restaurant, like no more soy sauce, no more ginger and wasabi. Uh,
Mm,
and we got rid of California rolls. We got rid of Philadelphia rolls. We got rid of all the things that make you feel comfortable in a restaurant.
hmm.
And I betted that people were going to be too Midwestern nice, that when they read the menu, they would see things that they didn't understand or things that they didn't want to order, but they were going to be too Midwestern nice to like get up and leave. And so, because that's embarrassing to be like, I don't see anything I like. We're just going
Right.
to go. I'm going to tip you for this water, right?
Hmm.
And so people did that, and they started just ordering stuff, little things. We were forcing them to be adventurous in the restaurant, and
Hmm.
as they did that, they wanted more and more and more, and guess that became a bigger part of our menu, and we started to move away from that big maki roll restaurant into this nicer version of the restaurant that I wanted. And at the
Mm,
same time, I was using the omakase counter to build clientele and
hmm.
workshop dishes and bites for the restaurant. And so they sort of grew over time. And we're still doing it. We're still making big, changes in the restaurant that I think are going to break them. Right. And we're still trying to find ways to like force you to be more adventurous. Like I'm trying to get rid of just straight up traditional Tokyo style nigiri, right?
Mm.
In the restaurant. I love it.
It's
But
good.
it's easy to come into the restaurant and go, I don't know what any of this is. I'm just going to have salmon and tuna.
Hmm.
When we've we've purposely gone out of our way to do something different, but we
Hmm.
still have a few avenues where you can veer off and escape what we're trying to the experience we're trying to provide you. And
Right.
so that's maybe the next step is just like, okay, no more, you can get
No more tuna.
nigiri, right?
Yeah.
But we're going to do this funky thing. And
But don't you feel now, especially like now we're like 10 years later, right?
yeah.
And you have these two other concepts. You have the izakaya, which, I think the word izakaya is sort of like I'm on the East Coast. And I think of the
Mhm.
first izakaya I went to was probably about 15 years ago. And I'm sure like in New York and California, because I'm in DC, like, maybe it's like, like these concepts and terms, sort of spread out. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Once they get a following and they gain popularity. And so you've put so much in front of the people of Omaha, given these different concepts and projects. When you were doing the fish and you went to open up the next two places, at what point were you like, or what point were you able to say, did the world change or did your standing change that you had access to better product?
So one of the disadvantages of being in Omaha is there's just no supply chain here for anything
Mm,
fine. You have to go figure it out. If I'm in New
hmm.
York, there's a handful of vendors who are
Yeah.
already bringing stuff in, and you tap in there. Same in LA, same in San Francisco.
Hmm.
I don't know anyone in the business who's doing that. I'm meeting people. I start to build connections. They start sharing, sourcing with me. I'm making friends in Japan. They're sharing their sourcing with me. I find
Hmm.
people who are willing to invest sort of in sort of my goal of opening a world class counter, and I start building that supply chain and reaching out myself to everybody,
Mm.
and I slowly start getting access to better ingredients and better in sourcing, and you know that translates into the restaurant. That sourcing flows down into Yoshitomo. We open up
Sure.
Koji. Koji is a little more like it's a lot more like the restaurants that I came from. It's more family sushi restaurant.
Hmm.
Nothing, you know, we're for everybody. Order the giant mayonnaise roll. That's great.
Hmm.
I make a ton of money on those things,
Sure.
right? And so they all kind of grow together, and
Hmm.
I finally decide that it's time to really open up this Ota counter. We've built
Hmm.
the clientele enough, and whatnot. So we open up this counter. It becomes kind of the culmination of all of these experiences that I've had, what I want to do. Now we've got the setting and the place to do it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
When we first opened, it feels the original room that I was doing these things in Yoshitomo kind of felt like you were watching like the original cast of Hamilton, but it's like at your kids' gymnasium. It's
Okay.
just the sound's wrong, the seats feel bad. There's nothing good about it. You can
Okay.
tell that the content's there, but the experience isn't built. And so we open up the Ota counter, and now I have a place to do what I want to do the right
Hmm.
way.
Mm.
And so really, I'm working in it. Nobody knows about me. I'm just quietly doing it. This is just my dream. Like I wanted to open this counter. This was the point of all of this. From that
Right.
zero counter to here, all I wanted to do was be a craftsman, right?
Hmm.
And what's weird, what's weird about this all is I've been on this journey now for about 20 years, from
Hmm.
maki roll chef to where I'm at today. And there was never any intention in any of it, from getting into the restaurant, my first restaurant, to opening Yoshitomo, to any of these things. There was no expectation of awards or recognition or national
Hmm.
anything. Nobody opens a restaurant here with the eyes on a James Beard award. That's Minneapolis. That's Chicago. That's other cities. No one does that here,
Hmm.
right? And so we're opening up a restaurant just to make food, and I'm opening up the sushi counter just because I want to grow my skills. And
Yeah, but
what's
I'm going to interrupt you. And I listen, I appreciate that you're not doing it for the accolades or the awards. I
Sure.
hear you on that. And I think some chefs would say the same thing. And I think some chefs would not say the same thing. Uh, but if I may, food culture has changed so drastically in the last 30 years, and that's not coast specific or large city specific. The diner is more knowledgeable. You have a
Mhm.
more educated diner because of things like the Food Network and even Top Chef, or Love It or Hate It, or and honestly, TikTok and Instagram.
Mhm.
People are seeing how they can eat. And I
Mhm.
think when what you're giving to where you are in Nebraska is, yeah, you can have really good food here.
Yep.
You know, like you had a vision, you're able to do it, but now you also have an audience that is a little more open to it.
And it's right place, right time, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
while I'm teaching myself, you know, better sushi, new preparations, all of this stuff, right? It I'm learning about restaurants. I'm opening them. I'm teaching myself about sushi. At the same time, this omakase culture counter, we hit a boom, right?
Right.
In the last 5 years, boom.
Wait,
Every
if I
city's
could
saying,
tell you, in the last year, just 1 year, here in the DC area, we have some very, I know you know
yeah,
DC, we have some very famous sushi
hmm
bars. Um, I think we have six new omakase spots in 1 year in
oh, I believe
DC.
it.
And
And
I mean, they're all incredible and amazing, but like, that's a lot.
yeah, and I have mixed feelings about it because it's like, I'm coming up. I'm teaching myself when the boom hits. I have now my counter has been open for a couple of years, right?
Hmm.
We had a counter before Chicago did. You
Wow.
know, we had a counter before pretty much anyone within about 1,000 miles of Omaha
Hmm.
did. So when the boom hit, I was already placed, ready to take advantage of it, right?
Hmm.
And now this thing has grown. But put it in context. 12 years ago, New York has five counters. Now New
Right.
York has like 200. No kidding. Did New York train like 1,200
No.
guys, chefs in this last 10 years? No. A lot of this is just restaurateurs, good opportunities for, untapped markets. And overall, it's good for the industry. Better food, better restaurants
Hmm.
are great for the industry. But now there's a ton of noise.
Mm.
There's just a bunch of gray area. And because guests aren't as experienced with this thing, the $60 counter, the $150 counter, the 300, 400, they're all getting looped in together, right? People
Mm.
are coming into my counter and they're asking me about the omakase, at just some random spot in the middle of nowhere. Like, have you been to this guy's thing? It was $50. And I'm like, it's not on my radar, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the guests are now starting to get more educated on this thing. We're getting more of
Hmm.
these restaurants, but I just happen to be right place, right time for a lot of this stuff.
Isn't that amazing? I want to jump ahead because we're going to run out of time.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit. You mentioned like the last 5 years, and I think discussing the massive explosion of sushi counters is important. But I
hmm
am sort of curious, right now in the hospitality industry, we're hearing so much. There was like that boomerang effect after the pandemic where everybody was like eating out, and
Yeah.
now, with tariffs and immigration and all sorts of issues. Um, what is that like for you in Omaha, Nebraska? Are you guys sort of insulated
Mhm.
from sort of the yin and yang of what's going on, or have you had to sort of pivot and swivel to stay up there and stay relevant?
So yeah, I Omaha, Nebraska is insulated, no doubt. When
Hmm.
when when things hit the coasts, I mean, everything from financial meltdowns and everything, it takes a while to get to us. Even food trends. The mojito took like 3 years to get here.
Okay.
But
That's so
so
funny.
like it takes a while, and sometimes by the time it gets here, it's already gone. And so we,
Mm.
we see a lot of it, but it has a bit of a blunted effect. And we have a unique situation. So I can't speak to the rest of Omaha because, as I'm talking to other chefs and friends, they're having the same tough time everyone else is.
Mm.
We're running on a couple of years of national recognition. We're running on restaurants that are some of the first experiential restaurants in the city. We're
Hmm.
really focused on hospitality. We're really focused on on all of those things that make, you know, really special restaurants special, and an experience for the night rather than just going out for dinner. And
Hmm.
we're one of the few in the city. And so while we keep taking chances and while everyone's waiting for the dust to settle, we keep
Hmm.
kind of doubling down on what we do. And
Mm.
so, like, you know, everyone else is having a hard time, and we keep having record breaking years. And I don't know what else to say about that.
I
It's
mean,
we're doing
congratulations.
good.
That's good. Amazing. Listen, it's a sawtooth. I hear, from some people like, we're doing amazing. And then I hear from some people like, oh, I bet you're hearing from everybody how bad it is. So it's a total sawtooth. So I was very curious to hear from you, like your perspective. It's so
Hmm.
important.
Yeah.
Last question. Um, so, 2026, we're just kicking it off. What do you see for 2026 as like some of your highlights? Like what are you hoping to achieve in this year?
So I've spent coming from that, we didn't open restaurants to get national acclaim
Hmm.
stance. I had actually spent the last couple of years, as this, I don't understand what's happening to us. Why do we keep getting recognition? And sort of kind of shying away from that.
Hmm.
And I've decided, I decided somewhere towards the end of last year that I was going to try to like reverse my thought process on that and really like chase it down. And
Good.
so I'm saying yes to like kind of everything this year.
Like this show.
Yeah, yeah. Like I would do one podcast a year for the past couple of years. Now I'm like, bring it on. Let's talk to
Good.
people. Let's get back on the travel circuit. I kind of gotten off it for a year and a half.
Hmm.
I want to. I'm traveling every month again. I want to make new friends. I want to get back to sort of a lot of the things that made me successful now, which was like making sushi for people in cities that don't have access to what I do, and
Hmm.
making friends and connections, and really sort of trying to be maybe somewhat of the chef that the city thinks that I am, and maybe try to see what that feels like for the year.
That sounds really intentional and really smart. And I will say, as somebody, if listen, I love a microphone and I do podcasts and I'm on TV and radio and all sorts of things, but turning the camera on myself can be very hard. So I love that you're like, no, I'm going to take a risk. You're a
Yeah,
risk taker, obviously. You've taken so many. So I love that. More risk. You know what? Worst comes to worst, you fall on your tush, you can always get back up,
yeah.
right? Like that's
It's
it.
scary, because I don't have
Good.
any training. I've taught myself. So my
Hmm.
fear is being sort of unmasked as a fake, amongst the craftsmen in my industry. Like
Hmm.
I don't want to be like I'm on your guys' level, but I want them. I would love for my heroes to be like that guy can make some pretty good sushi, or he's a craftsman. Like I've had a couple of sushi chefs, some real notable sushi chefs in Tokyo. When I do pop ups, tell me that I was a shokunin, and that kind of
Aw.
translates to craftsman. And like I've never felt so good in my life. I was like, I made it. Like a pro told me that I'm a pro too, and that's
Hmm.
all I wanted. Right? I did it.
I love that. David Utterback, I am so thrilled to have had this conversation with you today. You bring um, a lot of moxie to the conversation. I mean, I love a fellow hustler, but
Yeah.
I don't feel like you're hustling anymore. I feel like you're flowing, like you're really in a
Yeah.
place where you see what you want to do and you're doing it. So I want to thank you for joining me. I'm going to do a quick wrap up. I want to thank all of our listeners and viewers for joining us here on the first industry night of 2026. Of course, you follow me at NYCCI, Nellis, on all the platforms. Hey, if you like this conversation, you should share it with other people in the industry or other industry lovers so they can hear David's fantastic story. So click subscribe subscribe, do all the things. Of course, you want to follow me on the Instagram because that's where I do all my things. I've got a lot of travel coming up. I'm going to be doing a lot of eating and a lot of seeing and a lot of doing. So you want to be there with me. Thanks so much for joining me today on Industry Night with Nycci Nellis, and have a delicious week.
Produced by Heartcast Media.